Good morning. The committee will come to order. We'll be hearing today from Secretary Doug Burgum as we discuss the fiscal year 2026 budget for the U.S. Department of the Interior. Welcome, Mr. Secretary, and to the Secretary's team. Thanks for being here today. When we last heard from you as a committee back in January, you were President Trump's nominee to lead the department at that time. You've since been confirmed and have now taken the reins at the Department of the Interior. And this committee and ultimately the full Senate has since considered and confirmed Kate McGregor to be your Deputy Secretary. This committee has already favorably reported several additional nominees for senior positions within your department who are now pending on the Senate floor. We encourage Senate leadership to bring those nominees to the floor quickly so that we can provide you with the personnel, the people you need to help you lead the department in carrying out the important work that you do there on behalf of the American people, for which we're very grateful. I just add, very honored to have supported you and thrilled with the work that you're doing so far. Last year, the Department of the Interior had a budget of $16 billion, but our nation simply cannot fund on the scale that we have for decades. We've spent money that we don't have, and so we must borrow it, often from our adversaries, and saddle our children and even our grandchildren with that debt, much of which has been accumulated before some of the people who have to pay it back were even born or were old enough to vote. It's a form of taxation without representation. We generally frown on that in this country. President Trump knows that, and it shows in the budget that he sent to Congress. By acknowledging limits on what can be spent, a reality that every family, every business, every other organization in America deals with on a daily basis, the budget that the President sent to Congress is a long overdue step in the right direction. Decades of unchecked federal spending have created structural deficits that now threaten our economic security and our ability to respond to real emergencies. President Trump's budget begins the challenging but essential work of turning that gargantuan ship around. That work falls in part to your department, Secretary Burgum, from land and water management to energy and mineral development to partnerships with states, territories, and local governments. The decisions made at Interior affect millions of Americans and shape the future of our public lands, of our economy, and, of course, our national security. The department has a hand in many things, in everything from infrastructure projects to mineral policies that either enable or block our ability to compete effectively with China. It's responsible for stewarding vast tracts of land while supporting rural communities that depend on access to those same lands for jobs, for housing, for growth, for energy, for water, and many, many other things. In the best case, the Department of the Interior can serve as a partner to the states and an enabler of prosperity. In the worst case, it can become a bureaucratic gatekeeper that shuts out the voices of local communities. This administration is committed, of course, to the former. President Trump's budget sets clear expectations. Get results, streamline operations, and stay focused on core responsibilities. That means resisting mission creep, reining in regulatory overreach, and prioritizing the needs of working Americans over Washington's special interests. I want to commend the recent opinion by the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel, which affirms what many of us have long argued, that the President has legal authority to consider monument designations that are overbroad, duplicative, or disconnected from the statute's stated purpose. For nearly a century, the federal government has often operated under a flawed interpretation of the Antiquities Act, one that allowed presidents to unilaterally lock up millions of acres of land, but denied future presidents the authority to undo or even revise those designations. But as OLC's recent opinion discusses at length, There is actually a long history spanning decades of presidents reducing the size of previously designated national monuments or even de-designating them altogether. With this new legal clarity, we hope the Department of the Interior will work with us to ensure that public lands are managed in a way that reflects the needs of those who live closest to them. Today's hearing is about the kind of government we want to have and what it may take to achieve that. It's about whether the department is prepared to implement the President's agenda with the urgency and discipline that this particular moment in history requires. So we look forward to hearing from you and intend to align the department's operations with the President's budget, hearing how you intend to do those things and how you will ensure that the Department of the Interior may plan to deliver on President Trump's agenda. So again, Mr. Secretary, welcome. And I'd now like to recognize my friend and colleague, the ranking member on the committee, Senator Heinrich, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. We're here today to talk about the budget proposal of a department that is quite frankly not being resourced to meet its mission. Parks are cutting hours and services for visitors. Ranger tours are canceled. Toilets are overflowing and trash cans sit unemptied. Permits are languishing on empty desks. Energy projects are delayed or canceled. Contracts slowly wind their way through a Byzantine bureaucracy that was invented overnight. The senior leadership positions at the department are mostly vacant. Roughly 100 park superintendent positions are vacant. 5 of the 7 regional director positions for the National Park Service sit empty. At the Bureau of Land Management, about a third of senior leadership positions are vacant, including both deputy director positions and the director position itself. And the frontline staff is in no better shape. After promising to hire 7,700 seasonal employees to serve Americans during in their national parks this summer, the Park Service has managed, at least according to public reports, to hire only half of that. Memorial Day is gone. The 4th of July is around the corner. And all of this has occurred before this budget request is put in place. Mr. Secretary, when you were going through the confirmation process, I believe that you would be a responsible steward of our public lands. Conservative, of course, but responsible. And with your experience in the private sector and as a governor, I believe that you could rein in the sometimes reckless tendencies of DOGE, at least within the Department of Interior. We're never going to agree on everything, but I thought we could agree that our public lands are the greatest heritage of our nation, and we have a responsibility to hand them down to the next generation well stewarded. This budget request will not resource your department to responsibly steward our lands and waters. The proposal for the Interior Department operations next year includes a 30% cut across programs. It's no exaggeration to say that this would cripple the department as we know it. The cut to the Park Service is paid for by getting rid of most park system units. The National Park System would have to lose more than 350 of its 433 units to swallow that kind of a proposed cut. And yet, the department has still not told us which units those might be. Any hope for a speedier permitting system from the BLM is gone with a 35% proposed cut to that agency. Anyone who needs a recreation permit, a right-of-way, a grazing lease will be left waiting. That is not efficiency. The 35% cut to the Bureau of Reclamation puts critical water infrastructure at risk of failing to safely deliver water to farmers, fish, and people. The proposal completely eliminates the Water Smart program that provides resources to local, often rural communities and water users to conserve water and to make efficiency improvements to their infrastructure, thereby reducing conflicts over this scarce resource. The nearly 40% cut to the U.S. Geological Survey would kneecap the scientific research we need to understand how our natural world is changing in the face of a changing climate. And the major reduction to the natural hazards program would leave communities more vulnerable to earthquakes, volcanoes, and landslides. This proposal also completely eliminates the Biological Resources Program at USGS, which could mean abandoning bird flu monitoring, closing the most advanced wildlife disease lab in the United States, and discontinuing research efforts for climate adaptation. The USGS's migratory bird research also directly informs the Fish and Wildlife Service's bag limits for migratory bird hunting seasons. Eliminating this research would hobble the management of migratory bird hunting seasons, one of the 7 pillars of the North American model of wildlife conservation. The foundation of wildlife management in the United States is scientific management. We cannot manage wildlife without wildlife science. The budget proposal also overturns the bipartisan work of this committee in 2020 to pass the Great American Outdoors Act, signed into law by this president. Instead of supporting reauthorization of this great accomplishment, this budget robs the Land and Water Conservation Fund in order to pay for deferred maintenance projects. And lastly, but most importantly, this budget request, if implemented, would cause irreparable harm to Indian country. With 30+% cuts to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Indian Education, this budget represents a dereliction of every treaty obligation this country has to tribes and their members. This proposal even cuts the BIA's public safety account, belying any claim that this administration might try to make that it cares for the safety of people in Indian country. Mr. Secretary, you promised to prioritize the needs of Indian country in your time leading this department, but this budget simply doesn't give you the resources to be able to effectively accomplish that. I think we need to do better, which I say out of respect for you and our shared values. It is often said of President's budget requests that they're dead on arrival on Capitol Hill. And for the sake of the shared landscapes that we hold in trust for our grandchildren, I hope that's the case for this budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Mr. Secretary, we'll now hear from you in your opening remarks before we proceed to questions. And time's yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Heinrich. To the two of you and the distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning in support of President Trump's fiscal 2026 budget request for the Department of Interior and discuss what our team is doing to make America safer, stronger, more beautiful, and more prosperous. The department oversees onshore and offshore energy resources, honors federal trust responsibilities with our tribal neighbors, delivers water to the West, oversees wildlife refuges and national parks. The resources we sustainably govern directly impact the lives of every American every day. Interior managed resources hold a significant position on Americans' balance sheet. The public lands and minerals within Interior domain include more than 480 million acres of surface land, 750 million acres of subsurface and mineral estate, and more than 2.5 billion acres offshore. Our natural resources are natural assets and should be responsibly developed to grow our economy, help balance the budget, and generate revenue for American taxpayers. With common sense approaches and modern systems, we can increase return for our citizens, strengthen our economy, and create great paying and meaningful jobs, all while protecting our beautiful lands, our abundant wildlife, and our clean air and clean water. President Trump's 2026 budget requests $14.4 billion in current authority for the department, providing significant savings to the American people. The 2026 budget for the department features strategic investments to further President Trump's commitment to energy dominance, which is the foundation of American prosperity, national security, and world peace. We're increasing production of affordable, reliable energy on federal lands. We've already taken measures to increase production of oil in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day, which will help reduce the price at the pump for American families. And we proudly announced the first historic lease sale in the newly renamed Gulf of America will occur this year. We're also busy rectifying the mountain of restrictions designed to restrict resource development in America and especially in Alaska. We removed layers of red tape that undermine coal production on federal lands. Clean American coal is a triple win for our country because thermal coal provides reliable and affordable baseload electricity. Metallurgical coal provides foundation for bringing back our steel industry, and the mining and refining of coal that contains critical and rare earth minerals is absolutely essential to secure our own domestic supply chains for our defense, transportation, and technology industries. Right now, America is in an artificial intelligence arms race with China. Keeping domestic coal-fired power generation open will help us win that contest, while also driving down electricity costs for American families and increasing reliability of our grid. The department is also undertaking efforts to establish our positions as the leading producer and processor of critical and rare earth minerals, which will create jobs and prosperity at home, strengthen strategic and important domestic supply chains for defense and for the United States and for our allies, and reduce the global influence of adversarial states. Preventing and combating wildfires is vitally important to protect people, communities, and the environment. Nearly 65,000 wildfires burned more than 8.9 million acres across the United States last year, endangering communities, critical infrastructure, and local economies. Federal wildfire mitigation and suppression responsibilities for wildland fire are currently split across 5 agencies and 2 different departments. The current budget is duplicative and ineffective structure today. This budget reforms federal wildland fire management to create operational efficiencies by unifying federal wildland fire responsibilities into a new centralized U.S. Wildland Fire Service within the Department of Interior. This new service will streamline federal wildfire suppression response, risk mitigation efforts, and coordination with non-federal partners to combat the wildfire crisis. The Department of Interior upholds the federal government's unique trust responsibilities by fostering government-to-government relations between federal government and federally recognized tribes, American Indians, and Alaska Natives. This budget supports programs at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Indian Education, Bureau of Trust Funds Administration, sustaining the federal government's support for the core programs that benefit tribal communities. Since becoming Interior Secretary, I've had the opportunity to travel to national parks, historic sites, wildlife refuges, and more to learn and hear from the leadership on the ground. We're instituting changes to get more people actually working in our parks and refuges, and are looking forward to an outstanding summer. By opening more areas to hunting and outdoor recreation, we're helping to drive tourism, create jobs, and generate revenue for local communities, all while promoting responsible stewardship of our natural resources. Interior is also focused on streamlining our core business operations, which will result in dramatically improved efficiencies and lower cost for American taxpayers. This budget is about putting America first and doing the best for the American taxpayer. As Interior moves forward, these initiatives set the foundation for a renewed focus on responsible resource management and economic growth. I look forward to working closely with you to advance the President's priorities.
Thanks so much, Mr. Secretary. Okay, we're now going to turn to alternating 5-minute rounds. I'll ask the first series, then go to Senator Heinrich, and then we'll alternate back and forth in order of seniority, subject to the early bird rule on the committee, between Democratic and Republican senators, and we'll proceed that way. Mr. Secretary, the housing crisis is one that's felt in many parts of the country, but it's especially severe in some of our western states, like my home state of Utah, where the federal government controls the vast majority of the land, about 2/3 of it. Nearly 70%. Now, as you know, one of my top priorities has been to make a small percentage of underused federal land available to address housing affordability. The truth is that federal land is a massive underutilized asset, and local communities in the West are often those that pay the highest price for federal inaction in this area. Now, I was encouraged to hear President Trump talk at length about the need to use unused federal land to address the housing crisis, and I was very excited to see the joint HUD Interior Task Force that you helped to establish. Thank you for doing that, to take the lead in this area. A bill that I've introduced called the Houses Act is something that follows through on the President's commitment. Promises made, promises kept. Could you expound a little bit more on how just a fraction of 1% of unused federal land could help address the Western housing crisis?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Chairman. As I said at the opening, just within Interior, there's about 480 million acres of surface. You take the U.S. Forest Service, you can add another couple hundred million on that. If you took that number, 680 million acres of surface, and you said 1% of that, that would be 6.8 million acres. But we don't need to even think about that. I mean, let's just think about an example. Harry Reid, when he was the Senate Majority Leader, passed bipartisan legislation called the Southern Nevada Lands Act. That instructed and created a framework on how to dispose of lands in Southern Nevada, particularly in fast-growing Clark County around Las Vegas. The Secretary of HUD and I were in Las Vegas there. There was a land transaction that we conducted through that process. Only 41 acres were sold. 41 acres. We're not talking hundreds of thousands or millions. 41 acres produced $16.75 million back to the federal government from that small land sale. Another parcel that we were on was being sold through that for to build affordable housing. It was about an 80-acre parcel. This wasn't recreation land. This isn't national park land. This isn't resource land. This is right next to a 4-lane, growth. What I'll call it, not a highway, but it was this, a busy 4-lane street with center turn lanes with billboards on the side of it, billboards sitting on top of the federal land, and that's going to provide much-needed housing for the fast-growing Henderson. In your own state, we've been able to, just since February, since I've been in office, we've conducted 2 land swaps. These were things that were long considered but not executed, which again swapped land between the federal government and the state, filling in the checkerboard. In one case, we got land from Utah that helped us fill in a checkerboard of federal wilderness, but we also freed up land for the state of Utah to be able to use more productively. So as you stated so articulately, we've got a lot of value trapped in land, particularly bordering our fast-growing metro areas. We did a study of all these federal lands, and there's 250,000 acres that's within just a few miles of cities of 5,000 or more. And again, in the states like Idaho, Utah, Nevada in particular, we've got high percentage of federal land. A great opportunity to help lower the cost of housing by being smart on a case-by-case basis and moving forward with projects that help communities and help our states.
Thank you. It's no secret that the Department of the Interior has a maintenance backlog. It's a significant one, backlog that some have estimated at more than $33 billion. Yet past administrations have prioritized land acquisition over responsible stewardship of the land that the federal government already owns. Would you agree that before we acquire more land, the department should first do everything it can to, take care of the land that it already owns?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. And we have a massive deferred maintenance backlog, not just in our national parks. Of course, we have it there, but across BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, every place I've been, I've seen deferred maintenance, and whether that's building, roads, access. Back to the Southern Nevada Lands Act, which could be a model, some of the revenue that came from those land sales goes into and back into recreation. I had an opportunity to visit on BLM land a new visitor center that's being built near Henderson. The funding for that new visitor center is coming from a portion of those land sales. The Bureau of Reclamation applied for and got a grant. There's a new visitor center being built at Hoover Dam, which is a huge, not only hugely important for electrical generation and for irrigation, but there's a new visitor center there also paid for by these land sales. So one of the ways to solve for some of the deferred maintenances is to be strategic in how we dispose of federal lands and then recirculate those dollars into improving the recreational opportunities and the educational opportunities for our citizens.
Right. Thank you very much. My time's expired. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you. Welcome, Secretary. I want to continue on this same vein. And when will we know which lands are being considered for land sales? And also, I want to ask you if you have, well, let's just start with that so that we can have a public process here, so that the public can understand really what's at stake, and so we can get beyond the the current dynamic of what people are imagining, but actually understanding what lands you're talking about in this process?
Yes, thank you, Ranking Member. On the right now, we're at a proposal stage, and so we've taken a look, as I've just described, at a macro level. We've tried to take a look and say we have taken a look. How many acres do we have that might be something that could be of high value for an alternative use, say like housing, that has low value for recreation, mineral resources, et cetera, and those typically are things that are directly adjacent to existing and fast-growing population centers. So that was our first target. And of course, those are occurring most likely in the states that I've described, the 3 states that have the highest percentage of federal land, or the 4, Idaho, Alaska, Utah, and Nevada, have got the highest percentage of federal land, and are also have got fast-growing communities that are bumping up against low-value federal land.
I think to make sure that we're dealing with lands that are, as you described, one of the most important things will be to have a transparent and public process. Will you hold public meetings before offering those potential lands up for sale?
Yeah, absolutely, and I want to reassure members here and the public that there's, there won't be an acre of any of our 63 national parks that are considered up for sale. I mean, this is not about our most sacred and beautiful places. This is often about, like I said, barren land next to highways with existing billboards that have no recreational value, but would represent do represent a constraint. In some cases, cities are leapfrogging their infrastructure beyond the federal land, creating additional infrastructure costs for those cities. And of course, when we can do infill, that helps, creates a great revenue opportunity for us to help, whether it's deferred maintenance, new recreational opportunities, or reducing the deficit, but also helps those cities operate more efficiently.
You talked about the Southern Nevada legislation, but there's actually a federal program that's available to every single state for the BLM to utilize, and that's the Federal Land Transaction Facilitation Act. The funds that get generated from public lands that get sold under that legislation go to recreation, they go to access, they go to conservation. We're currently developing some housing in New Mexico using that framework. Is that a framework that you have looked at for this process?
I certainly want to look at all the models that we have today that are already working and learn from them to as we go forward to make sure that we're using the best practices that we've identified.
Obviously, the advantage of FLPA over the Southern Nevada was designed for a specific county, and so it's kind of a one-off. I would urge you to look at FLPA in part because it's something that is available to you now. It's proven. We've used it in New Mexico several times, and it's available west-wide. When you were before the Senate Appropriations Committee, we talked about this plan to potentially downsize the national park system by transferring some sites out of federal management to the states. And I sent you a follow-up letter on that. I very much appreciate that you replied to my letter, but what your reply did not include is just what sites might these be. Where are you in that process? Because we're several months now from the next budget year, and if this is going to be a serious proposal, the American people deserve to understand what's potentially on the list.
Yes, and I want to go back to your opening remarks that suggested that we would need to be disposing of hundreds and hundreds of these smaller park units to make up some kind of budget deficit. I just would say, having had an opportunity to dig into the Park Service budget, I don't think that's the case. I think we've got a tremendous amount of overhead that we're operating. I mean, across the federal government in general, across Interior in general, and I think that as I learned as governor of North Dakota, when we were able to reduce spending by 27%, there was a lot of anxiety when we had to do that, but we were able to do that and not. We actually increased the money that went to our parks. We created a new state park in North Dakota even after reducing budgets because we took cost out of the I call the overhead that was occurring in the Capitol.
That's precisely why we need a plan, right? So that
Yes.
we're not arguing over hypotheticals, that we're arguing over real numbers. So
Yep.
given the fact that this is a budget year that we have to deal with now as the Congress, I want to understand what those real impacts are, what the sites are that are being considered. Is that a list or a plan that you can get us, you know, in a week, in a month?
Certainly not in a week, because one of the challenges we're having on, even if we have a proposal like this, one of the things I found that's I would say really almost staggering from an operational standpoint is that the systems that we have make it almost impossible to get information. You know, I hear regularly about, you know, we've got 330 million people visiting parks. Those aren't 330 million different people. Those are visitor days, but then we often don't even have the data to find out, are those people that live in the local community? Are they international visitors? How often? I mean, if you're going to dispose of something like the Knife River Indian Village in North Dakota that I think only, you know, may have less than 1,000 visitors in an entire season, and yet we've got a park superintendent and other people there and federal dollars, and that would fit in my own state nicely into our State Historic Society framework, which could then take advantage of local resources to manage it. You know, our target would be to look at the places that have very low visitation, but even if you would ask a question like, hey, please give me the visitation by each of these over 400 sites, that, you know, there's numbers that aren't, they're not good data on that. So it's going to be difficult to make in great decisions quickly. We just have to try to create the data framework because I would want to have any decisions we make be data driven, and that's going to make it more difficult to identify how we can do things that make sense from a budget standpoint.
Thank you. Senator Barrasso.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for the great job you're doing. A couple of questions. I think during your initial hearing for this position, we talked about leasing and permitting for energy development. I thought it was a disaster under the previous administration. Can you just talk a little bit about what actions the department has taken over the past number of months to correct course and what it plans to do in the next fiscal year?
Thank you, Senator. Well, first of all, part of what we're doing is trying to reverse some of the activity which didn't follow the law last time around, because, you know, part of what precedes permitting sometimes is leasing, and the federal government under the Biden administration was, as proven by court, you know, states took the federal government, the Biden administration to court. Biden administration lost. They were supposed to be holding lease sales. They weren't. When they don't hold a lease sale, that's lost revenue to the American public. So again, trying to get back on track on both onshore and offshore lease sales, both in the lower 48, the Gulf of America, in Alaska, has been a big effort. On the permitting standpoint, we're getting closer to putting up a transparency dashboard, which will be able to show by department, by state, by permit type, where permits are in the process, how many days they've been in the queue. I think that this kind of shining this light on this will help the public and others understand, you know, just how much red tape we've created, but it'll also create an opportunity for us to accelerate. We also quietly announced that we felt that we could get an environmental assessment, an EA, done in less than 14 days, and that we could get a EIS done in less than 28 days. On the pilots that we've done already, both of those have been accomplished. Correct. People have said, how is that even possible that you can reduce something by such a factor? But it turns out that if you're doing an EA and somebody works on it for a few hours and they pass it on to somebody else and it sits on their desk for a month, and then they pick it up, they work on it, they pass it on. By the time you get a year's gone by, you know, we've got an opportunity where we can put more minutes on mission, more time on task in 2 weeks than what they might have put in a year, and the quality product that we can put up at the end of that will inform the decisions that the private sector and public local political subdivisions need to make. So I know that we can actually deliver a work product faster, but this is about improved business processes. And of course, in your state, we are now, in a few weeks, I mean, we're going to be permitting new mining operations for the first time in decades in this country, and we've approved it for the first time in Montana, some mining operations. So again, we're back. This nation has to get back in the mining game. We've got to get back in the energy development game, and we're pleased to be part of that.
In addition, we talk about my state, you know, after the Biden administration lost the election, they came out with some punishing things. Out of office, they lose the House, lose the Senate, lose the White House, and their Bureau of Land Management finalized what was the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan, which is the final plan is punishing to the state of Wyoming, devastate the people and the economy of Southwest Wyoming, locked up millions of acres of land, the local communities, the entire state relies upon. Can you just talk about what the department's doing now?
Well, the Rock Springs RMP and as well as the Buffalo one, I mean, these were a couple of things that were incredibly egregious that weren't really management plans. I mean, they were creating new concepts out of whole cloth that was really meant to restrict all forms of land use as opposed to follow the multi-use mandate that we're given. So those are under review, and we hope to get back to following the law and make sure that the citizens of Wyoming and those private landowners that live in those areas have an opportunity that they have the same opportunities to thrive that others do without the heavy hand of government.
And we knew, as in your home state and in mine, we're very fortunate to have great relationships across the state between private, state, federal partners. In Lander, Wyoming, there's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Office that serves both tribal nations, the Northern Arapaho, the Eastern Shoshone, on the Wind River Reservation, along with our neighboring counties. The office does valuable work for Wyoming, such as big game monitoring, studies of wildlife disease, grizzly bear management, habitat restoration. There's been some confusion on the status of the office and whether the staff are currently present or not. Can you give us an update on the current status of the Fish and Wildlife Office there?
The Lander, Wyoming office is an important office, and we're going to make sure that it's staffed and able to execute against their important duties and do that from the Lander office as opposed to working remotely from someplace else.
Great. In terms of sage grouse, we're the home of a large population of greater sage grouse and habitat. For over 15 years, Wyoming has been in the forefront of adopting and paying for new management approaches to protect the species. Biden administration proposed to designate over 600,000 acres as so-called areas of critical environmental concern, which is basically a way of locking up the land. Is the department planning on reopening the greater sage grouse management plan? Do you know?
Yeah, the greater sage grouse is neither on the threatened or endangered species, and this critical habitat you described again is another whole cloth creation that effectively creating a wilderness area out of nothing. And so we're taking a hard look at that because we want to get back to following the actual law.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Mr. Secretary. And I know when you came to see me, you didn't know a whole lot about the details of the clean energy tax law that I wrote, and particularly its manufacturing encouragement and the critical minerals. And so I want to talk to you about where we are now. I believe the administration today on this technology neutral law is making an unforced error because the administration with the House bill is basically taking clean energy sources off the table. Now, just in the last couple of days, energy company owners that have gas plants, they have gas holdings, are saying they need more energy now, and that renewables have got to be part of that equation. So my question to you is, why not work with us here in the Senate so that we can fix these provisions in the House bill on renewables that basically are putting clean energy through bureaucratic water torture? Let's clean that up, and as a result, we could do more to work together for your concept of energy dominance, market growth, and more than anything, do it without mandates. That's what the law says today. Why not go that route and clean up the House bill now?
Well, Senator, I would love to connect with you following this hearing and learn more about the gas plant operators that you're saying need more.
Ketchum, the head of Ketchum, who's the president's hometown utility, said, I need electrons now. Get them to me from any possible source. But renewables got to be part of it. So why can't we make that part of your agenda?
Well, would say the House bill reflects, I think, a priority, which is that we need to have reliable and affordable, and some of what we tend to call as renewables would fall into the category of being intermittent and expensive. And so I think that that's been the...
This is about creating choices, and my time is short. There are no mandates here. I understand you are interested in issues relating to batteries. That can deal with intermittent questions. But let's get down to fixing this flawed House bill that executives are now all over Capitol Hill saying that we really like technology neutral. We like the concept. We want to make it work. Right now it includes provisions that make the provisions with respect to international aspects unworkable. They call this kill the American business structure. We need to correct those kinds of provisions. I'd like you to be part of that, and we'll follow up with you. Let me talk to you next about the parks. We're having terrible problems with respect to Crater Lake. The superintendent of this treasure left because he didn't have the staff to protect it. Now, you all are saying that these reports say that visitors can have the same kind of experience this year that they've had in the past. That's not what we're hearing in Oregon. What we're hearing in Oregon, you know, they have problems even with volunteers running the show. So my question on this issue is, can you make a commitment to work with me to ensure that all the national park sites in Oregon have the staff and resources they need?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say at this time that we do have, as we know, had thousands of positions that we filled for summer, hiring in the parks. In addition to summer help in the parks, also wildland firefighters. And so if anybody's listening, we're still hiring at the parks for summer positions. So would be happy to continue to work with you on staffing up.
Last one is on wildfire. I can tell you we're expecting more heat in Oregon than we thought we were going to have, particularly in Eastern Oregon. Federal staffing is well behind where it should be because of the hiring freeze. Can you assure Oregonians today that despite these issues, we're going to have the firefighting staff that we need?
Yes, because there is no hiring freeze on wildland firefighters, and we're staffed between Interior and U.S. Forest Service about identically where we were last year at about 17,000 firefighters. If there's a discrepancy in Oregon, we'll be happy to look at that.
I have a few seconds left. I want to go back to my first request. My door is open to work with you on this question of a technology-neutral policy. It makes sense. The markets like it. Companies like it. It would allow us, particularly in the case of somebody having gas holdings, to do something now about this great need when we're concerned about AI to make sure we have enough energy. You're interested in that. But we've got to fix the problems in the House bill because companies are telling me they are drowning in the bureaucracy and trying to figure out how it would work. We can do better than this, and we'd like to work with you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Daines.
Secretary Burgum, good to see you here today. I'm grateful for your leadership. You've made a lot of significant accomplishments delivered here over the first 5-6 months of your tenure. Thank you. One issue that we're focused on in Montana, among many, is grizzly bears. As you're well aware, the Fish and Wildlife Services advanced a proposal on grizzly bears in January that we've spoken on. I want to again emphasize that this Biden-era proposal punishes Montana's successful grizzly bear recovery efforts. We should celebrate the fact that the bear populations are way over the recovery targets, delist the bear, and transfer the responsibility of the management of that great species back to the state of Montana. Your agency reviews the status of bears. Would you commit to looking at those recovery targets that were set by FWS for the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem, which, by the way, have been well exceeded?
Yes, absolutely. I'll commit to that. And you're absolutely correct. Well exceeded by more than double, I think.
It is. You're exactly right. You know, that for Greater Yellowstone was 500 bears was the recovery target. We're at 1,100 bears right now. So it's time to celebrate recovery and delist the bears. I want to move to the Bull Mountains mines and coal operations. Montana is home to 3 major coal mines that have been in limbo for years because of inaction by the Biden administration. But under your leadership, I was talking about on the radio here this morning, in fact, what you did, you've got Montana back on track. Earlier this year, you approved the Spring Creek Mine in eastern Montana, and just last week, you approved the Bull Mountains coal mining roundup. I can tell you there's a lot of Montana families who depend on those jobs who are, it's a big sigh of relief at the moment. So I want to thank you for prioritizing that, Made in Montana Energy. It's not going unnoticed. And by the way, some have said this wasn't well thought out, this was a knee-jerk reaction. This is the 700-page EIS for the Bull Mountain Mine. It's the result of extensive public comment, extensive public input, years of review, and that's contained in this EIS. I know the community in Montana is grateful for the hard work your team put into this. The last piece of the puzzle is the Rosebud coal mine, which feeds the Colstrip power plant. I hope to see that permit in the very near future. Secretary Burgum, my question is this. Could you speak to the work you are doing to support more Made in America energy and the work you have done in Montana?
Well, I'd be happy to. And again, it's exciting to see what's going on in Montana. It's an example of what can happen in this country, because when we've got reliable, clean, affordable baseload going into our grid, that creates opportunities for everyone. Lower energy prices drives every aspect of the economy. Having affordable, reliable electricity right now is key to artificial intelligence. It's key to manufacturing. In a state like Montana that is supportive of having ample amounts of baseload is going to be attracting advanced manufacturing, attracting AI data centers, attracting jobs, helping your universities and your schools. And it's an interesting thing right now where we've got people that are pursuing energy poverty in some other states. It's great. We've got 50 states because states can have some of their own approaches. We're at Interior and the Trump administration, we're trying to help all 50 states. Some are welcoming that help, others less so. But I think Montana is a shining example of what a state can do. I mean, you're going to have electricity prices that might be 50% lower than other parts of the country. And if you're someone who's thinking about a $10 billion capital investment in AI data center, you're going to go to a place like Montana and say, I'm going to go to a place where they actually believe in having affordable, reliable electricity.
You know, what's amazing, Secretary Burgum, is Montana has the most recoverable coal than any state in the United States. It's one of the sometimes undertold facts. The welcome sign is out, Secretary Burgum. Thank you for your leadership.
And in that coal, in addition to thermal coal for electricity, there's also critical minerals.
There are.
And those critical minerals are absolutely important for us to have secure supply chains. This is one of the important challenges we're facing as a country, and Montana can be part of the solution.
Secretary, I want to close with America the Beautiful Act. My good friend Angus King and I have worked long to protect and strengthen our national parks. Last month, we introduced the America the Beautiful Act to reauthorize the National Parks and Public Lands Legacy Restoration Fund. Remember when President Trump signed the Great America Outdoors Act, many said it was the greatest conservation win in 50 years, signed by President Trump. The only problem we have is that expires after 5 years. Well, it's been 5 years, believe it or not. It's time to renew this to deal with the crumbling infrastructure, the deferred maintenance problems we have in our national parks. With America's 250th birthday around the corner, I can't think of a better gift to give America than to sign that bill. We're working hard on that, Senator King and I. This is a legacy item for President Trump. Mr. Secretary, will you work with Senator King and me to get this to the President's desk as soon as possible?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, which I consider a higher title than Secretary or Senator, just so you know. I'm disappointed.
As a former governor.
That's right. Oh, yes, that's true. I'm disappointed, Mr. Secretary, with the budget, particularly for the National Park Service. First is what materials we've been given. This is the budget justification for the National Park Service for the 2025 budget that's submitted to Congress so that we have something we can work from and work with. That's 2025. This is what we've been given this year for 2026. That's an insult to the Congress. that's not adequate to give us the data that we need in order to make the oversight decisions, because we don't know the details of what's being done. There's some boilerplate in here about how we're going to make things more efficient. It's hard for me to understand how gutting America's best idea isn't America's worst idea. A 37% cut in the National Park Service budget, which was already underfunded, I don't believe is responsible. The word stewardship has come up in this hearing several times. That ain't stewardship. Here's some data. This is visitation at our national parks going back to 2010. The blue bars are visitation. The orange is staff at the National Park Service. So you can see there was already a growing disparity back in 2010. This is where staffing was. This is where visitation was. Here's where we are as of this budget. Right here. That's where we are as of this budget. We were already woefully understaffed, and you're talking about cutting the budget by another third. Now, my real question is why? The $1.2 billion you're cutting from the National Park Service is devastating to the National Park Service. It doesn't amount to anything in terms of our federal budget. I did a calculation. If our federal budget was the height of this room, what you're cutting from the National Park Service is the combined height of 2 credit cards. In other words, to save virtually no money from the federal budget, we're devastating one of America's treasures. And that's what I don't understand. And you yourself a few minutes ago said we don't have the data, you don't have the visitation data. This is ready, fire, aim. How about waiting a year, developing the data, finding out what it is, because you can't convince me that a detailed analysis of the National Park Service took place in the last couple of months to justify this pitiful submission to this committee. So I'm anxious to hear. We all know the term bang for the buck. This is damage for the buck. This is huge damage to the Park Service for a very minimal return in terms of reduction of the deficit, reduction of our federal budget. Why in the world, given your commitment to the national parks, the new park, the Teddy Roosevelt Park in your state, why did you let them do this?
Well, Senator, I want to just first, appreciate the chart that you're holding up behind there. I believe that number, if I can see it correctly, probably is the full-time staffing as opposed to the summer and seasonal. I think that we actually have, it's a mix. I think that line I'm trying to see there.
Well, you allowed more seasonals for this year, but I understand only half of them have been hired, and we're in the summer right now.
More than half have been hired, but I think, again, this is a mix. Again, when I just got back from a trip to Alaska, I was at Kenai Fjords. This is a, beautiful and amazing park. It's, the road gets plowed in May. It snows over in November. This is a classic case where we need a lot of staffing. Cruise ships are stopping in Seward. They get, hundreds of thousands of visitors over a 3-4 month period. And then in the wintertime, the visitor centers aren't even open. So we have to figure out a way to be able to do flex staffing. It's not just as simple as the raw number. And the one number that I was able to get—
The raw number, there may be details in here, but it's pretty unmistakable, the trend on this chart. And
well, but the other thing—
I don't understand. You're saving a very small amount of money. You're gutting I looked it up last night. The National Park Service is the most popular federal agency. The most popular federal agency. Why in the world would you target this agency, particularly when you yourself in your testimony today said, I don't have the data?
Well, we're working—
That's ready, fire, aim. Get the data, understand the details of the budget. Give us something like this, and then we can decide what the plan should be, to echo the Vice Chair. What's the plan for doing this in a thoughtful way, not an arbitrary way of, all probationary employees and that kind of thing?
Well, in that thick book that you have there, I'm certain that there's one thing that's missing, which is how many of those people actually work in a park? Because we spent 8 weeks this spring rebuilding all the HR data to find out, of all the people you have in your chart, how many work in a park. Because the real issue that citizens want is, do I have an interpretive person? Do I have a ranger? Do I have, are the bathrooms clean? And so part of that is making sure that we have fewer people working, in places like Washington, D.C., more people working in the parks. I believe that we can reduce what we spend in overhead in the park and have more people actually working in the parks. And in a place like Yellowstone this summer, there are more people right now on the ground in Yellowstone than there were 3 years ago.
And I'd like to see that plan before you submit a budget that cuts the budget by 37%. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But I would just want to say one thing, Mr. Chairman. It's one thing that we're in a sad point in America if we say that cutting $1 billion is meaningless or it's as thin as a piece of paper. We're all Americans. We are all part of a budget thing last year. This country spent $2,000 billion more than we brought in. That's what a $2 trillion deficit is. And it's to think that we can't find savings in every agency, particularly when we've got, decades-old IT systems and way too many people in overhead. I mean, we just have to all agree that we can be more efficient and still deliver great services at places like our national parks. We can do both of those things. It's not an either or. These are false trade-offs. We can have better experiences at the park, better staffing at the parks, and we can have fewer people working for the national park system. My best guess is that barely half of the people of that number actually work in a park. The rest are in some other jobs.
Part of the responsibility of the National Park Service is stewardship and resource management, not necessarily being park rangers. That's part of the responsibility of the Organic Act of the National Parks. And I'd point out that $600 billion of that deficit that you mentioned could be covered by better enforcement at the IRS of a lot of people not paying their taxes. $600 billion, that's the estimate that the deficit could be reduced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hoeven, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, Governor Burgum, thanks for being here. Thanks for your commitment to do both. And I agree. Provide better service and still find savings. And I think you can do it, and I think you will do it. I think you'll show that that's exactly what you're going to do. I've seen you do it before. Thanks for being here today. In addition to all your tasks as Secretary of Interior, you're also the leader, the chairman of the National Energy Dominance Council. So I want to talk to you about that work and how that's progressing as well. So if you would, as you know, I am all in on energy dominance for this country. Our state's a huge part of it, and we want to continue to be a huge part of it. And that involves both private land, but also public land, right? So it fits with your day job as Secretary of Interior. So talk to me, what steps is the department and are you taking to unleash more oil, gas, and coal production on federal lands, onshore and off, to help meet the growing demand and our reliance, not only for ourselves, for energy with AI and everything else that's going on, but also to partner with our allies to get them off energy from countries like Russia and other adversaries?
Well, thank you, Senator Hoeven, and thank you for being such a champion for energy policy. You understand as well as anyone that the right energy policy drives American prosperity and it drives peace abroad. So thank you for your support. The approach has been, again, a lot of this coming from President Trump's executive orders, unleashing Alaska's extraordinary potential, the energy emergency that he signed on day one appropriately because of the risk that we're facing with our electrical grid in this country and also the risk that we're facing with critical minerals. These are key things that our nation is up against for insecure supply chain. So across the board, we've been working to try to accelerate projects. We do that first by following the law. As you know, the Biden administration failed to hold lease sales onshore, offshore. They closed down areas even like the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, which was designed in 1923 to be a petroleum reserve, going through the steps to reopen up the public lands that were designated for energy resource. So we're going through those steps. As you've heard from some of your fellow senators here, whether it's coal mines in Wyoming or Montana or Alabama, metallurgical coal, we're back in the business. We have to get back in the mining business. We've killed mining. Not we, but the prior administrations basically killed mining in this country. And if we're not mining, we're not in the critical minerals business. If we're not in the critical minerals business, we can't build We can't build a fighter jet, we can't build a car, we can't build a cell phone, all of those things that we need to be. So it's across the board, oil, gas, rolling back the Biden export ban. We're seeing record amounts of capital investment coming to this country around AI, because they know that this is a country now that's committed to building the power to power the future economy.
Well, I'm not surprised, but you went right to my next question before I even asked it, and that's critical minerals. You'd be glad to know in your home state, we're just christening a plant that's going to convert, or that's going to process nickel for advanced battery manufacture in the United States, so we don't have to get it from China. And of course, that's a legacy of some of the great work that you did as governor. But you went right to my next question, which was on critical minerals, which is a key part of it too. Also, I would add that under the very strong leadership of Chairman Lee, we're going to provide some more tools for you, both in terms of lower taxes and less regulation that's going to help, continue this, all-in effort for energy dominance. The other thing, and again, as people get to know you, they're going to know that you have a love for the national parks. I mean, I know it. I've known you for over 30 years. You love the national parks. But you're also a rancher. So talk to me about what we can do for our ranchers who are on public lands as well, grasslands and other aspects. And of course, that farming, ranching, that goes to forestry, that goes to so many things. People don't realize what a huge, diverse industry ag is. What can you do in that realm?
Well, one of the things we can do is make sure that we're speeding up permitting. And again, as we work towards, because again, we've got a grazing permit on BLM land or U.S. Forest Service land that can hold up people, and they have uncertainty about their permits. That affects these ranch families. So we're putting up redoing the whole permitting process, putting up a permitting transparency dashboard, holding the BLM offices at the state and local level accountable for how fast they get permits, helping them with the IT systems to address backlog. We just have to be in the business of serving our customers. When a rancher is getting a grazing permit from us, they're the customer. They pay us, the federal government, for that right. When someone is getting a timber permit from us, they're paying us. We want to be in the business of serving those customers, because when they pay us, they're paying us, meaning that's revenue to the federal government. That helps reduce the deficit. That helps, us have resources to be able to, tackle deferred maintenance. So we just have to, again, get back into the business of the people that are utilizing public lands appropriately, following the law, that we serve them like the customers that they are.
Right, and they live out there. They are good stewards of the land. That's their home. And the other thing is really important is access, as I know you know. Thank you for your good work.
Yeah, and we have opened up, we've taken steps to open up hundreds of thousands of more acres to hunting and fishing. There is red tape there, so we're increasing access as we go through this.
Glad you brought that up. We both love hunting and fishing, so thank you.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to note, I don't have questions this morning about critical minerals, but I'm glad to hear Senator Hoeven and the Secretary engage in that conversation. Mr. Secretary, the invitation remains open to come visit Lithium Valley in Southern California and see the tremendous potential there for lithium and other critical materials as well. Feels like it's been years since you were here for your confirmation hearing and your vote in our previous conversation, so I'm hoping you're enjoying the job. It's everything you were looking forward to and then some. But look, we're knee-deep on a number of issues and concerns, so I'll get right into it. As I'm sure you're aware, the Department of Justice just yesterday published an opinion that asserts that the presidents have the authority to abolish national monuments. I know the chairman made a reference to that in his remarks earlier today. I believe this is an extremely dangerous opinion that flies in the face of 90 years of precedent. And you and I discussed this when you were coming through for confirmation, because we worked very hard in recent years on establishing and expanding monuments in California in a very thoughtful and balanced way. So this is personal for me. Given the recent opinion, I do need to ask you for the record, what are your intentions towards recently designated national monuments in California, which, as I've shared with you, enjoy strong bipartisan support, not just at the federal level, but from local and tribal leaders as well?
Thank you, Senator, and I do want to tell you, I would love to accept your invitation to come out and visit. And of course, California does have some of the top critical mineral resources in the country and can play a really important role in our national security. So look forward to talking to you about that. On the monuments, we have a responsibility and direction to take a look at the recently created ones. I think this is something that we all know. If you just, again, we do have the data on that. Most of these monuments have been created in the last weeks and months of presidential terms, and always under the idea that they were everyone was consulted. I have had people in my office, not for the ones in California, but I've had people in my office saying, hey, we weren't consulted. So again, as we listen to the feedback from tribes and citizens and others around the country, we have a responsibility to get on the ground and do some ground truth. And I think the question is not whether they're monuments serve a purpose. I think the real question is the size that generally comes up, because there are people in communities, when we create restrictions on land use, that does restrict some of their economic opportunity, and we want to listen to those as well. But again, we're looking for a balanced approach, and happy to continue that dialogue with you.
Well, I appreciate that, but just, again, for the record, recognizing states in the West tend to be larger than states in the East. So the appropriateness and size of monuments and other areas of designation tend to be larger because of the acres that we're talking about. You mentioned engagement and consultation in the creation of monuments. That absolutely happened, as you know, in California, so I appreciate you recognizing the distinction. If it's going to be revisited or undone, we expect that same level of engagement on the back end before any action is taken or before any decisions are made. I know my time is limited. Let me move to another topic. As you and I have talked in the past, water, so important to California, to everybody, but especially California. The Department of Reclamation, according to reports, has lost 1,400 public servants, approximately 25% of the agency's entire workforce. In the Bureau of Reclamation's regional office in Sacramento, there used to be 50 staff handling financial issues alone, and now there's only 12. This is the staff that works to approve contracts, grants, agreements, et cetera. Yet the Bureau of Reclamation's California office has cut its staff responsible for these aspects of water infrastructure by nearly 80%. Will you commit to look at the number of finance staff at Reclamation's California regional office to ensure that there's sufficient capacity there to meet the administrative needs of our critical water infrastructure and investments?
Yes, happy to for sure take a look at that. I'm a little surprised at the 80%, because the only reductions would have been so far through people taking one of the early retirement options, unless in that data, and my team can follow up, because we did take some people that are in finance, HR, and IT and roll them up to the Secretary's office, because we felt there was an opportunity for unification at a broader level, state, versus say regional. So I want to make sure that some of those people, I'm just wondering if they're still there, they're just being accounted in another area.
Yeah. Well, if they're accounted, but also where is their work, where are their roles and responsibilities, and have they changed to still be California specific or more broad for the department? I know my time is up. Let me just put a pin in both on the reclamation side, how critical it is not just for within California infrastructure, but also, as we've discussed multiple times, the role reclamation plays for all the Colorado River states, both the lower basin and the upper basin. So we're going to be calling each other more frequently yet again after this hearing. And lastly, we'll submit for the record questions about the cuts to the U.S. Geological Survey. They play a critical role in developing Shake Alert, the nation's only public earthquake early alert system that more than 50 million Americans depend on. Technology's come a long way. It can be very helpful to save lives and minimize damage in the event of inevitable earthquakes. And so I want to revisit some of the budget cuts to that program as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Hyde-Smith, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for the great job that you're doing. And I so appreciate you revitalizing our nation's offshore energy potential. The short-sightedness of the last administration to block the lease sales and lease areas, just, it could have been so much more detrimental, but thank you for bringing us back. And I truly think that the department is headed in the right direction in that revitalization that is so important to states like Mississippi, who are on the Gulf of America. But the offshore oil and gas leasing in the Gulf of America is vital to ensure the entire nation's energy dominance, as we well know, and allowing states like Mississippi to continue to receive the Go Mesa funds for coastal conservation and the restoration work, and for making funds available through programs like the American Battlefield Protection Program. The Battlefield Program plays so many important roles across the United States into helping not only to preserve the historically significant battlefields in parks like the Vicksburg Military Park, which is our #1 tourist attraction in Mississippi. And it's good to see that the President's budget has included the funds for that program. My question is, will you speak to the department's commitment to ensuring our historic battlefields continue to have access to these funds, because it is very critical to us?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Yes, we have a commitment to that, and also, again, I mean, this is one of the, on a broader policy standpoint, when we develop our nation's resources, we have the revenue to go back to protect other things that people care deeply about. And one of the things which I don't think is widely understood is that the #1 contributor to coastal restoration around the Gulf is revenue coming from the oil and gas industry as part of the revenue sharing from the royalties that the government receives from those that are developing. And so again, whether it's a battlefields, coastal restoration, it's a win-win for our Gulf states, and it's a win-win for America when we've got the revenue to be able to both lower the cost of energy for all Americans, improve energy security, have more prosperity, but also have revenue that's not tax revenue, it's royalty revenue from an asset that we're participating in that helps pay for these things like this, the tourist attraction that's #1 in your state, or whether it's coastal restoration, which matters to everyone.
Thank you for that commitment, and we are all enjoying that. I'm pleased that the budget request highlights also the need for marine minerals and expanding critical mineral information and access in the Gulf of America. The University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, has provided support to these efforts over the years and is a willing partner in continuing to provide the technical and scientific support. What is the department and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's vision for critical mineral exploration and development in the Gulf of America, and will the department continue to rely on partnerships with research universities to achieve all of this?
I think that, the partnerships are key, and this is, again, one of the ways that we can stretch a federal dollar is working in conjunction with, great universities, private sector, private companies. There's private companies doing advanced research around the potential for ocean bed critical minerals. So I think this is an exciting area, and I think we, again, as we, are in the current global environment that we're in, where we're in a battle where it's been well understood for some time that China is controlling 85% of the refining of the rare earth minerals that we're dependent on. This has to be a national priority of the highest order, that we've got to get into the critical minerals game, because we, like I said, we can't build a fighter jet, a drone, a car, or a cell phone without them, and yet somehow we found ourselves dependent on an adversary for that. So whether it's onshore or offshore, that's a game that this administration's committed to making sure that America's future is secure, and these offshore opportunities present a great opportunity to help secure that future.
Thank you very much. I love the direction you're going and want to be very helpful as much as we possibly can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Secretary, Governor, thank you for being here. Your budget proposes transferring public lands out of federal management, and a couple places refers to a bloated federal estate. But in many cases, these lands are supportive of our outdoor recreation, $17 billion recreation in Colorado, $1.2 trillion nationwide. And there's discussion of in your remarks about increasing outdoor access, but the BLM recreation budget, which is where most of that access gets created, is down 60%, and that's not just compared to last year, that's compared to pre-COVID. I'm very sensitive to that notion that, you know, during COVID, the budgets went spending. So I've done all my numbers back to 2019, and that 60% cut, I mean, as a former business owner, we both are, when you make those kinds of dramatic cuts, it's often hard to get just the fat. You end up getting a lot of what's really necessary as well. So I guess I'd ask, shouldn't we be looking at ways to make better investments, but still maintain, to a significant extent, those investments in outdoor recreation and in our access to public lands?
Yes, Senator, thank you, or I should say Mayor, Governor, Senator. We agree with your comments, and this is certainly when we want to make sure that we're being strategic in terms of where we're applying the dollars. Love the fact that you've gone back and done that analysis to 2019. You may be ahead of some of the work we're trying to do with the systems that because we're trying to have this, trying to put together a look so we can see where we were, because when people talk about dramatic cuts, sometimes the cut would take us back to 2021 spending, and I'm like, wow, we got, you know, the world wasn't falling apart in 2021. Maybe we could live with that for a while as we try to balance the budget. But I appreciate that. Recreation is such an important, the outdoor recreation industry is massive. I mean, it's like 3% of the employment in this country is now in outdoor recreation, and that group does so much. I mean, they're doing so much. This is a group broadly that is leading in conservation. I mean, you know, hunters, fishermen, anglers, campers, climbers, those are the people that are contributing their own personal dollars back. So this is a community that's of utmost importance to us going forward. So I appreciate your zeroing in on that piece, and we'll continue to take a hard look at that.
Yeah, and I think even the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service caught my attention. Going back to 2019, it's cut 30%. And I know from experience as a governor that they run pretty lean always anyway, and that's kind of the foundational for a lot of outdoor recreation, is making sure the habitat for wild animals, for fish, that we maintain, and always are trying to think about ways we efficiently and cost effectively can improve that.
Yeah, and they run 65 fish hatcheries, which then help support all the entire fishing industry as well. So.
Absolutely, and it's a place where, in many ways, it helped pay its own way, because there are all sources of revenues as well. You know all that. Wildfires and confronting this wildfire crisis really does push us towards making our forests more resilient. But obviously, staffing losses and BLM's land resources funding being cut by a third, again, back to 2019, I'm worried about our capacity to respond to the wildfire risk, and especially how do we make sure we have resilience. And it's complicated, and I'm not trying to gloss over the complications. How do you expect the BLM is going to be able to deliver on the wildfire and forest management goals when you're making these kinds of cuts to the workforce and to critical parts of the planning?
Well, as we head into this wildfire season, we just had a briefing yesterday, but Secretary Brooke Rollins and I have been working together. We've held joint reviews on firefighting. We've talked about ways to gain additional efficiencies at the operational headquarters overhead level, so that we can put more boots on the ground, literally. This summer, we're about 17,000 staffing across the two agencies for wildfighters, so we're about equal with where we were last year. But there's no hiring freeze on that. We still have positions open. If people are interested in jumping in and having an amazing summer experience, we can get them trained up for wildfire fighting. But we're also looking at some other models. There's a great model that's going on in Alaska between the state and the federal government. And we also, this budget proposal does include that we would consolidate the wildland firefighting because there's 4 firefighting units in Interior, 1 in Fish and Wildlife. Sometimes we're well coordinated, other times we've got like 5 generals pursuing different strategies and tactics, and when we have a checkerboard of federal land. So I think so we're taking a hard look at some opportunities there, and we've got Senator Sheehy and others are advancing legislation to take a look at this as well. So we'd be happy to continue that dialogue, particularly with states that are deeply involved in having their own state resources.
Right, like Colorado. I appreciate that. We'll stay in touch and pursue that. I yield back.
Senator Cassidy, you're up next.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, great to have you here, sir. Leasing off the outer continental shelf of Louisiana. As you might guess, it's on my mind. And the Biden administration couldn't have screwed it up more if they had actually just said, let's screw it up, which I think they tried to. How successful do you think you'll be to get regularly scheduled lease sales, understanding that that not only contributes to American energy dominance, but creates a lot of well-paying jobs for people in my state and across the country, well-paying jobs. So toss it to you.
This is a priority for us to get back on a predictable, regular, follow-the-law schedule of lease sales. And for the Gulf of America, we're targeting to try to have a lease sale ready to go by December of this year.
That's great. Now, one thing I've heard from my industry leaders is that it used to be so clockwork that they could plan a fishing trip with their son, fly into New Orleans, go to the lease sale, and then go out there. Now, that's important, as you know, not just because they want to go fishing in our beautiful waters with their son, but because time is money. And if there's regulatory delay, it's just chewing up their capital, making it less likely that they can do this. So what is the possibility that we will get back to where on a regular, like, first week in May or something, you can kind of count on it?
Absolutely. Predictability is a goal for ours because, again, it helps on all the capital planning processes, the internal planning processes of these companies, and they've got other places to spend their money. I mean, if they know that a lease sale is coming, they know what date it's happening, they can do the research, they can do the evaluation, they can try to figure out where they may want to bid. If they don't even know when a lease sale may happen, they go look at other fields and other opportunities, and sometimes those dollars are going to other countries. We're chasing capital away from the United States, and if people care about the environment, you should want to have every drop of every barrel produced here, every electron produced here, because we produce it cleaner, safer, smarter than anywhere else in the world. We're the country that's actually reducing, solving pollution, solving environmental issues, solving CO2 issues. That's all happening in America. It's not happening in the rest of the world. So we want to have those dollars for energy development come to this country. That's energy security for us. It's prosperity at home. It's peace abroad, and predictability of lease sales in the Gulf and on land is absolutely central to that.
Music to my ears and makes total sense. Tell me, you've talked about a little bit in your testimony regarding mining the ocean for critical minerals and other things. Now, the law of the sea attempts to address that ability to do so. As you know, the U.S. has had several areas marked for itself. At least one or two of those areas we've since lost because we've not ratified that treaty. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do we progress on that?
Well, I think that one of the things that's exciting about America is that innovation has always been the key to American greatness. The amount of innovation around mining in general. I think there's this, outdated 30, 40, 50-year-old idea of what mining is, but mining, oil and gas development, I mean, again, I had an opportunity to get to an offshore platform off of your state. I mean, these are technology-rich, unbelievably sophisticated operations. Any American would be wowed or thrilled to see what we're accomplishing. And I think that the future for really clean, efficient, I don't even know to say like vacuuming, but think of like vacuuming the seafloor with little impact, but what it could mean to us, particularly when we're in a spot right now where we've ceded ourselves and the rest of the free world has ceded the control of critical mineral refining to China. They control 85% of the refining on critical minerals, and on some rare earth minerals, they control 100% of it.
So let me ask you that, knowing that this could be part of the solution to that very issue, is there a plan kind of being initiated that we are actually going to begin to do just that? Develop the technology or use our remote operated vehicles to go deep and to pull up whatever?
Well, I think you'll see in the weeks and months ahead that now that this the threat of China flexing their muscles relative to control of the supply chain, that this is going to become a national priority for our country, that we have to make sure that we never put ourselves in a position of being reliant on an adversary for things that are fundamental to our entire economy.
Oh, that's, again, I like that. I always like to say, wherever there's energy in the world being produced or something like that happening, there's somebody from South Louisiana showing them how to do it. And so this will be full employment for the people from my state.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, the ranking member. Secretary, welcome. Thank you for being here. I want to jump back to a public lands conversation that you had with the ranking member. In Nevada, as you well know, and thank you for being there, by the way. I appreciate your working with our state and along with HUD. But in Nevada, we support public land sales, particularly in southern Nevada, within the parameters that are set by SNPMA. And I thank you again. You identified SNPMA as a model, and I think it is a model, because the model was created and requires robust stakeholder engagement that really addresses all of the varied land management issues we need to work together, from affordable housing to economic development to addressing our infrastructure needs, our water needs. It's a stakeholder group, and it is important we have that. And the money actually comes back to BLM to the benefit of the lands, the federal lands in the state of Nevada. But here's my challenge. You talk about the benefits, and it should be a model, but in action, you're not actually doing that. And through reconciliation, instead of supporting the model that you talk about and tout, and the ranking member, excuse me, the chairman also talks about this as well and invokes Harry Reid all the time, but the reconciliation package doesn't really true to the SNPMA model. In fact, in the House side, I'm assuming working with the administration, the reconciliation package included federal land sales, but those federal land sales, and particularly in southern Nevada, weren't near areas where we could actually do affordable housing. Here's a map of Clark County. It's 8,000 square miles. This is the area where Las Vegas is, and this is where the boundary we want to expand to address affordable housing and other issues. But in the reconciliation package on the House side, the pink areas are the federal land you identified, in the middle of the desert. There's no infrastructure. I don't know any builder who's going to build housing in the middle of the desert. It makes no sense. And now I'm hearing there's a proposal by the chairman of this committee, again, to put this back into reconciliation, because that was taken out of reconciliation. It wasn't well thought out and wasn't working with the local communities to figure out how we actually build affordable housing and use the federal lands to the benefit of everybody living in those states. But now I'm hearing that there is a proposal going to be put back into reconciliation to allow the federal government to sell up to 2 million acres of federal land. Is that correct?
I understand that there's some consideration of that, but I don't believe that's been formally introduced yet.
Okay, and so if you're going to look at selling up to 2 million acres of federal land, and most of that land is across the West, what states will be involved in that process?
Well, I would say that if the law passes, what we would do as an executive branch is follow the law. But generically, I think when anybody's looked at land sales, they would look at the states that have been most overburdened by the federal government percentage, and among the top of that, Nevada, Alaska, Idaho, and Utah are among the states that have the highest percentage of federal land. They also
in certain states like Montana might be exempted.
Not familiar with that or understand why that would be or not be that.
And then so who are you working with in my state? If you believe that SNPMA is a model and the stakeholders should be engaged because it makes sense, we don't want something like this where you're selling land that it's not going to benefit you because it's not a high dollar value. It's not going to help us because it's not going to build affordable housing. So who are you working with in my state as stakeholders as you're looking to sell some of the federal land in Nevada? Who are you talking to?
Well, I got 100 things on my plate, and right now the only activity that we're involved in on a day-to-day basis in Nevada is following the existing law, which is the Southern Nevada Lands Act.
But you just said you're going to be selling up to 2 million acres across the West.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, you're not going to be selling up to 2 million acres of land, looking at 2 million acres of federal land in reconciliation package. I thought you said you were.
No, I think I think you said that, and I said that that's understand that proposal may be coming, but
Oh, okay, so it's a proposal. So as it may be coming, and if it becomes law, who would you be talking to in my state as you look to sell federal land in the state of Nevada?
this is a hypothetical about something that hasn't been introduced and hasn't been passed. And
It's
so
coming. I mean, it's going to be dropping here any minute now. We're going to see a reconciliation package. I'm told there's going to be a sale of federal land in it. You can't deny that. Or you're telling me that maybe federal land will not, the sale of federal land will not be in the reconciliation package?
wouldn't this be something the Senate would be debating?
I would hope so, and that's why I'm asking you, because we have not seen anything. The chairman has it. He has the information. It's behind closed doors. I'm assuming they're talking with the administration because you're going to be taking the lead on all of it. So you're before me now, and that's why I'm asking you the question. So if you don't know, then I'm really concerned, and we should all be concerned across the West. So that's my concern here, and I think from my perspective, and many of us in the Western states, I would hope, as you're looking at selling federal land that impacts our states, you're going to be working with us to address that. And you talked about SNPLB being a model, but the money comes back into BLM for the purpose of these Western states, not into the Treasury to reduce a deficit. So you're also going to be looking to changing the formula. Isn't that correct?
Well, I think you're acting like I'm proposing legislation.
Well,
And
I am
I think
concerned that you're the lead agency and they're not talking to you about how the federal lands are going to be sold. Is that so? Maybe I'm assuming something that is not happening here. You have no involvement in the reconciliation package when it comes to the sale of federal land?
I think what I would say, which I've said here many times, is the same principles which I can repeat over and over again, which is it would only make sense for us to sell federal lands if we were.
I get the principle, but are you actively engaged in the negotiations in the reconciliation package?
I'm not actively engaged in negotiations.
You're not actively engaged at all in the conversation around the sale of federal lands in the reconciliation package, the proposal. You're not involved in that.
There's conceptual talks about how that would lay out, but there has not been negotiations.
Okay. I am running out of time. I'm going to submit the rest of my questions for the record. Let me just say this. This is not antagonistic. This is about how we work together. In the state of Nevada, over 80% of the land is owned by the federal government. We have always wanted a good relationship, and I work towards that 100%. And I look forward to that continue. But you can't come here and say that you support a model program that was started by Senator Reid and SNPLB and then upend it and completely do something different. And that's all I'm looking for is accountability with this administration and working with us and doing what they say they are going to do to the benefit of everybody in the state of Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will add here, the language will be out shortly. These things take time. We've been going through the Republican side bird process, and we're going to be releasing bill text soon. Anything on public land sales, and this will involve a public process that would be part of any sale. Senator Justice.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, thank you all. How you doing there, Mr. Secretary?
Doing great, Governor.
I lead off by just saying just this. You know, we talk about so many different things, it's unbelievable, whether it be grizzly bears or, you know, government land sales, offshore, hunting and fishing, parks, energy. Can you imagine that all of that is going through this man? Now, let me just tell you just this. I'm from West Virginia. I know an awful lot about energy, and I'll get to that in just 1 second. And forgive me, these allergies are going crazy right now. But I can tell you this, and I can tell you this with complete confidence. Here you've got a man that has been an unbelievable governor. He has unbelievable experience. He's a business guy. He's a rancher. He is absolutely an outdoorsman beyond belief. He is the absolute perfect choice for this job. And it's an avalanche of stuff of what he has to do. That's all there is to it. He's got to wear so many different hats, it's unbelievable. Absolutely, without any doubt, he is the pick of the litter of all the secretaries. In my book, hands down. I've said it over and over and over. One of our colleagues just a little while ago said that from the renewable standpoint, and I've been one to embrace all. I want us to all have a level playing field, but embrace all. I did that in West Virginia over and over and over, because we're going to awaken to a situation in this country in just a little while where we have an energy meltdown. We all know that. An absolute energy meltdown, and we are not moving at the speed that we'll have to move at. But one of my colleagues says, you know, from a renewable standpoint, we are in a situation now to where we're having a democratic water torture. Well, what do you think has happened under the Biden administration to the gas industry, the coal industry? You know, what has happened? You talk about water torture, it was off the chart. Now, we got to do something about it, and we got to all come together, and we got to have a kumbaya moment where we all come together and we move forward in a really, really good way. We can do that. We can genuinely do that. We have somebody here that cares for our parks, our lands, our nature, everything in the world that we could never have selected anybody any better. So I tell you just this, there's one thing in the budget here, and it jumps out at us all over the place, and it's Wildland Fire Service. Please explain a little bit more, because it is the only thing that we have not found a way, and the last thing I'll say in just 1 second, but please explain.
Well, thank you, Governor, Senator, for those kind words. Wildland Fire, we got some incredible people on the ground. We have incredible dedicated professionals. We got aviation resources combined between the 4 wildland firefighting groups in Interior and the 1 inside of U.S. Forest Service, over 400 aircraft that either we own directly or contract. We have all these resources. The thing that's missing sometimes is that we aren't deploying them in a way as fast as we could. I had this experience last fall as a governor. We had a wildland fire, prairie fire pushed by 60-mile-an-hour winds, burned 124,000 acres. That's larger than, like 5 times larger than the LA fires. 2 people died, a rancher trying to save some horses, another guy trying to dig a fire break on his tractor, and it just, you know, when it's coming from a mile away at 60 miles an hour, it's there in a minute, it's not there in 10 minutes, and they just underestimated the power of that. But here's the deal, as governor, with the fire started, it's early on Saturday morning. We know we have a problem. I got the National Guard out. We got helicopters, Blackhawks flying with buckets, you know, trying to save property. I called the feds on Saturday morning and I said, we got something here. Let's get after it when it's still small. We can get this thing out. We need aerial support. I mean, we need fixed wing aerial support to go along with our National Guard copters. That was Saturday morning. The planes arrived on Tuesday after 2 people had died and 124 acres had burned. And there was planes sitting in Bozeman, Montana on the ground that were never deployed because there wasn't the decision-making hierarchy to say, let's send them over there. We only needed them for a half a day. These skimmers come in, they pick up 6 tons of water in 11 seconds. They were flying laps off Lake Sakakawea, and they had this fire out in a canyon in the Badlands in 4 hours. So we have to get the right equipment at the right place at the right time. We have to respond. We have to have guaranteed, I'm going to say guaranteed response time, but if you're in a community and you call 911 because your house is on fire, you know, maybe it's in your kitchen, and then, you know, by the time they get there, your house is burned and so is the neighbors, as opposed to putting it out when there's no damage. So part of our expense for wildfire fighting is response time. The longer we wait to respond, the more money we spend on the back end. So Brooke Rollins and I working together, saying we need to have a unified approach in this budget. There's a It transfers the wildland firefighters from U.S. Forest Service. They'll still be branded U.S. Forest Service wildfires, but we get them under a unified command, reporting up to a structure inside of Interior. So we take the 4, because we got firefighters in BLM, BIA, national parks, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. All 4 of those have got wildland fire groups plus Forest Service. So we take the whole 750 million acres of federal land and say, you guys are reporting up to a unified command as opposed to 5 generals. We do have some examples. The Interagency Wildfire Center in Boise, Idaho gets us closer to that. We got some examples in Alaska we can build on between the state of Alaska and BLM and Forest Service up there. So there's some great work that we can do to build on, and we can give these people the technology resources, because we put them in danger. We're not giving them. We gave technology to our soldiers in the front lines in Afghanistan 25 years ago, better tech than we're giving wildfire fighters that are walking into these heat storms. And we today, with satellite imaging and heat recognition, there's all these things we can do to protect land, protect property, protect the lives of our firefighters, and they deserve that. And we think we can get there, but it's gonna. So that's in this proposal, is getting us unified across those five groups.
I hope that everybody just listened to that answer. What you saw right there is a CEO, a business guy, a governor, absolutely a super experienced and super smart guy. Really and truly, that's who we've given the keys to lead us in absolutely the Secretary of the Interior today. I know you will do an incredible job. And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And God bless us for having Doug Burgum right now. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Burgum, good to see you. I think that there's a big theme here about public lands. And I join my colleagues, the ranking member and senator from Nevada, who've asked you about the selling of public lands. But we've already had this debate here. We had a very big debate here. So my state, obviously, we like public lands. It's a juggernaut of an economy. So when you think of our state, you think of ports and parks, and you think of $22 billion and over 200,000 jobs. So it's big money to us. So we led a fight with many of our colleagues on this committee to get permanent funding for LWCF, to get it reauthorized and permanent funding. In fact, this, if you'll hold that up, is an actual quote from the President of the United States during the big battle. He said, "I'm calling on Congress to send me a bill that permanently funds LWCF and restores our parks. I'll sign it into law. It will be historic, and it will be for our public lands." Okay, so that, I was there, I was at the bill signing. I know what it says. It basically says you have to do acquisition. It is setting in law the amount of money that should be spent on acquisition. So when we're talking here this morning, we're all amazed that you seem to be putting forth a budget that is basically saying, I don't want to acquire, I want to actually sell public lands. What we figured out as a coalition of people, hunters, fishermen, outdoor recreationists, travel and tourism people, we figured out that it's a juggernaut of an economy and we want to grow it. And we were able to get President Trump to sign a bill. So now your budget, and I asked you about this at your confirmation hearing, I asked you specifically whether, if confirmed, you said, I will implement the law as enacted by Congress. Well, the law enacted by Congress basically says that you have to spend 40% of this LWCF funds and make acquisition. It doesn't say sell public lands, it says acquire lands. So I don't know how you're proposing a budget that basically is going in the opposite direction of what was, let me refresh my memory, 60 sponsors in the Senate, 254 in the House. This was not a little decision. This was putting to bed this notion that, oh, it's either I'm going to fix some roads in our forest or I'm going to do land acquisition. Now, I get, even the chairman, he and I have had many conversations, as did his former colleague from Utah, Mr. Bishop. We've had many conversations about LWCF in the past. I get some of their issues that they have brought up about LWCF, but Congress voted and President Trump signed the law. Now we're asking you to implement it. And so I want to understand how you're proposing anything other than following the Dingell Act.
Well, certainly we'll continue and we'll follow the law, and I think that what we're having here is we shouldn't be confused that two things can happen at the same time, which is, and it's about which lands and which acquisitions, because 40% of the LWCF is a pretty small number relative to the scale. I mean, it's meaningful, hundreds of millions of dollars, but the opportunity for us to accelerate purchases, say, of infill and fill out the squares where we might be acquiring land for the federal government that is a private inholding inside of a national park.
We do it all the time. One of the biggest things we used LWCF for is because the federal government kept having to spend money because a road washed out.
Yes.
In accessing Mount Rainier. So we basically acquired more land, built the road on a different thing, so we weren't paying $250,000 every few years. So we're all for that.
Yeah, and
we're not for, but we're for following the Dingell Act, following the law of the Great Outdoors Act, and making sure that we are actually doing acquisition. Why? Because we have figured out, I think somebody said during that time, that it was the third biggest industry behind finance and healthcare. So we figured out that it is a big economic engine for our nation. So we want to see it. Now, I get that you have people here who didn't succeed in that battle and who may not believe that, but this was bipartisan, bicameral, and we need that support. I want to just mention—
I'm just saying both of these things can happen at the same time. You can take LWCF
Your
lands.
budget doesn't say that, and I think it's heading to a catastrophe, so that's why I'm bringing it up. On the fire point, we have a big fire in Cle Elum right now. They aren't getting the direction. I hear what you just described as governor and the issues, but this is where we're heading. This is where we are now. This is where we're going to be, what is this, September? All of this in red. So we have a fire in Cle Elum now, and we need direction. We need to know. My constituents want to know what are people going to do to help coordinate with Interior and the Forest Service. We need to know now. So if you could help us with that, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hebrona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aloha, Mr. Secretary. We're dealing with an administration that is dismantling government services that provide services to our people by cutting employees, by cutting programs, by cutting whole agencies out of our departments. And you had the spectacle of DOGE cutting thousands of federal employees. And I don't think any of our secretaries, I don't think you were consulted as to who should be cut from the Interior Department. So our secretaries, you and others, are left to come and respond to our questions of why this happened, why these people were cut. And you sit here saying, well, you don't have that information, you don't have that breakdown. Maybe on Forest Service people, these were not the people who were actually working in our national parks, but you don't really know that, do you? So I'm really glad that Senator King, Senator King, right here, he talked about the concerns that he had about the cuts to our national service people, because these are the people who actually interact with American people. And if the parks bathrooms are not cleaned, or if they're not the services that are provided at our national parks, it's kind of obvious. And so you were not able to provide us with the kind of breakdown that we asked. And I don't know why you have to come here without the kind of information that we ask. And this is not just you, but I serve on the Veterans Committee. The VA Secretary says he doesn't know, he doesn't have the information as to all of the veteran employees who were cut, and maybe another 80,000 will be cut. He comes and testifies without that information. He says that he will provide that information, and when I asked him to commit, to come back to the VA committee to respond to the questions that we will have, he doesn't make that commitment. So there you have it. You know, while you may not know who's been cut, those of us who are actually on the ground know some of the employees who are no longer there. For example, in Hawaii, reductions in MPS, FWS, USGS, and more have eliminated necessary positions that are critical for these agencies to carry out their missions. And we have parks with extremely high vacancy rates. We have lost a superintendent, a chief of law enforcement, a chief of interpretation. The list goes on. These are the people on the ground who are providing services. And so when they are gone, it's pretty obvious to us. So that I can understand what efficiencies you claim that these cuts are providing. We need data. I would really appreciate it if you provide us a list of all the DOJ, DOI positions, DOJ, that's another department, positions in Hawaii that have been vacated since January 20th, including those that have been fired and those who accepted early termination, including locations, positions, descriptions, and justifications for their elimination. Will you provide that information to us?
Yes, we'll be happy to, Senator.
And will you commit to coming back and responding to our questions as to how all of this happened once you provide us with the information and explanation?
Yeah, happy to, but I should clarify that if there's anybody so far, it's someone that would have taken early retirement, because that's where the vast...
Oh, that's another thing, you know, the fork in the road, early retirements. I don't even know if that's considered legal. One more question. Federal programs that research or address climate change, like the USGS Climate Adaptation Science Centers, have been indefinitely paused. Whatever that means, indefinitely paused. That sounds like they're not coming back. Is it your intention that any programs that have to do with climate change or climate-related programs within the department will no longer be supported?
Given the explosion of spending that occurred during the last administration, we were taking a look operationally ourselves. It wasn't a DOGE thing. It was something that I was fully supportive of, to take a look at all contracts and grants. There was over 36,000 contracts and grants that were issued from the Department of Interior.
So are you going to be targeting all those that have to do with dealing with climate change or the impact of climate change? Is that the directive from this administration? Because we know that this administration doesn't think that climate change is real, and our understanding is that departments have been directed to eliminate references to climate change. Is that what's going on in your department?
What's going on in our department, if I'd be allowed to finish, is that we're looking at the 36,000 contracts and grants that are totaling billions and billions of dollars of spending. In some cases, we found that those grants were going to organizations that got 99% of their revenue from that grant. To me, that's no longer an NGO. That's just an extension of our own government. If the
Last question then, of the thousands of contracts that you are reviewing, can you provide us with which of those deal with climate change?
We can certainly take a look, but I think that there's so many organizations included references to that as part of a way to access funding. It's hard to know who was actually working on it or who was just using that as a way to.
Well, considering that you're doing a review, I would think that your review would be able to identify those contracts that have to do with climate change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, welcome. You still have that Alaska glow. I can tell you've been up in this state. doing your due diligence. Nobody takes a vacation up there. We work you hard, and I really appreciate the time that you and Secretary Wright and Administrator Zeldin gave to Alaska-specific issues. The fact that you were from the North Slope all the way down to the Kenai area, on the ground, listening to people, and really leaning in on the President's executive order. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. And I know that you're all putting together your action plans. Know that I and the other members of the delegation stand ready to assist you with all of these efforts. But just as important as it is that we're leaning in with you, I know that we all need your folks, your teams, whether it's those that are going to go through the process here and be back here in Washington, or those men and women that are on the ground. And so I have raised with you before some of the concerns that I have about some of the reductions in forces. You've kind of walked me through what you're looking at, how you want to get folks out of headquarters, out in the parks. I'm supportive of this. I do ask for your help and your commitment as the chair of the Interior Appropriations Committee, and I'm dashing in between these committees right now. It would be very helpful if you could provide us with a full list of the BLM, the U.S. Forest Service, and National Park Service staff positions and their locations that we've lost since the new administration. We're just trying to understand again where the staffing within the various agencies falls out. So this is an ongoing process. I get that, but as close a communication and connection that we can have on that, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. I am going to ask you a question here. I have the Chief of the Forest Service in the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee room right now. We're questioning him, and my last question to him was with regards to the Wildland Fire Service consolidation. This is moving 11,000 wildland fighters, $2.85 billion into the new DOI Wildland Fire Service, eliminating the U.S. Fire Service Wildland Fire Program altogether. What I've shared with the chief is, I don't know whether this is right, wrong, or indifferent. I do think the effort to be smart with efficiencies and consolidations just makes sense. But I also know that we've seen threats from wildfires all over this country. My ranking member on the committee, Senator Merkley, what his state has seen in Oregon is just, I mean, it's scary stuff. You know all about it. I'm just hoping that there has been good discussion and fair assessment about how this restructuring might affect the coordination between Alaska's interagency fire management efforts, particularly with our Alaska Fire Service, our state, and our tribal partners. We're going into our fire season. Unfortunately for us, or fortunately for us, I guess, it's been the wettest summer that we can possibly imagine. So hopefully we're going to escape the fires this year. But can you just share with the committee a little bit of where you think we go on this fire services consolidation effort? And you may have repeated this, but I appreciate it.
Well, let me just say on this topic, first of all, what we're doing for this summer and this fire season right now is just at the top, very top. Secretary Rollins and I are just staying in close coordination. We've held, I think for the first time ever, we've held joint fire briefings. I've been over to the U.S. Forest Service with her to get the briefings there. She'll be invited to hear briefings from the 4 firefighting groups that operate within Interior. As in the proposal of the unification, I'll call it unification. I wouldn't say move because people aren't being asked to move where they work or where they report to or their duty stations. It's just getting the 5 generals at the top to actually have sort of not just a joint chiefs of staff, but to have a unified strategy, and particularly around things when we're optimizing across aircraft, because this is one of the places where we know from personal experience we're under optimizing the decisions around when to deploy. And and if we can put out a fire early, it saves us a lot of cost on the back end of being able to do that. So first of all, it's not for this fire season. We'd have time to plan for next year to do that. But overall, we want to take a look at models. The positive models I've cited already today here is the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise is what I'd call a good start and gets us a long way there. And then also the model that I was able to get deeper on in Alaska, between where BLM takes the leadership across a number of agencies, and then the coordination, including the co-location at a military base with the Alaska Fire Service, which is a fantastic fire service, and how they've divvied up the approach where they're covering each other's land in some cases, but then optimizing the use of forces. So I think the Alaska model and the Idaho model are two things we would look at as we would go forward. But also it's unifying pay. That's something I didn't mention earlier, but we have different pay and benefits for these different firefighting groups, and that they should all be the same. I mean, the fire itself doesn't know whether it's on BLM land, U.S. Forest Service, BIA, U.S. Forest Service, and the people that are fighting those fires are facing the same dangers. So getting unified pay, benefits, bonuses, retirement benefits, those things is another thing that Brooke Rollins and I are working on as part of this unification. And the last thing I'd say is technology. We've got varying applications of technology. Some are way ahead, some are way behind. That puts us at risk. But when we're thinking about how do we budget and how do we make sure that the people that are fighting those fires on the ground have access to life-saving technology? How do we use satellite technology for early detection across these massive areas that we have, including Alaska? There's just some things we can, when we're applying these new technological resources, if we get one satellite system going, we don't need 5. We need 1 for what would be the new wildland firefighting service.
Well, I look forward to talking with you more directly as you're moving forward with what this really looks like and how it's going to be implemented. I appreciate the recognition of some of the unique partnering that we have made work. But yeah, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We just need to fight the fire. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Okay, we've now completed round 1. We had aimed to wrap up this hearing by noon because of other commitments we've got. We're not going to be able to do a full second round, but Senators King and Heinrich would like to say something briefly before I wrap up. Senator King.
Mr. Secretary, you and I differ on the National Park Service. You may have picked that up in our conversation. But I just want to compliment you on the fire service unification effort. That makes total sense. And I think it's a very sensible proposal. I think it will help in managing fires and managing the resources more efficiently. And so we disagree on some things, but this is one where we agree. Nice work. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Secretary, in the exchange between you and Senator Cantwell, I wanted to point out that I think you're absolutely correct. You can use existing federal law like FLIPFA or like the Southern Nevada law to dispose of isolated tracts next to urban areas for housing and simultaneously use the Land and Water Conservation Fund for public access, for hunting and fishing, for filling in those inholdings in the midst of national parks or other federal public lands. I think what's missing and probably generating some of the angst around the LWCF piece of that is that we haven't received the priority list for the administration. Normally around now we get a list of those projects that make sense, the projects that create access, the projects that improve hunting and fishing conditions, and the conservation projects. So I would just encourage you to get that list to us so that we can have fidelity to both of these legal constructs at the same time.
Great, thank you.
Secretary Burgum, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your willingness to serve our country. You bring to the table a lot of expertise, experience, hard work, and our country is better off as a result. So thank you for being here. And this concludes today's hearing. I want to thank everyone for participating. Any senator who would like to submit additional questions for the record, they should submit those. Those will be due by 6 p.m. this evening. Thanks again, Secretary Burgum, for answering our questions. Yes, Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, again, say I concur 100% with your opening remarks. I do want to thank you for acknowledging that we have 6 different leaders, all of who could help advance the concerns of this committee, who some of them as far away as April went through and got approved in this committee, but have not yet had a floor vote. The sooner we can get those 6 executives actually working, the faster I can be responding to requests from people to this group where so appreciate everyone's attention to that. I know very busy with the big beautiful bill and lots of other things, but making sure that we've got the leaders to execute on your requests would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, that's an excellent point. I couldn't concur more. And yeah, while we have other legislative matters going on, as has been said in other contexts in this hearing, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and we've got to get that done, doing everything I can to expedite that logjam. The committee stands adjourned.